Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is excoriate, and this verb was suggested by the viewer Qatar. Thank you so much for this suggestion. Now, let's spend a moment and look at some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first way you may encounter the verb excoriate can mean to censure or denounce. This first definition, as you can tell, is very strongly worded. So someone is really strongly saying this person's behavior or their words were totally wrong. I don't want to be associated with it. Maybe they shouldn't have the job they have if they hold these beliefs. But this is a very sort of strong meaning to it. Related to that strongly worded meaning is our second definition. If we criticize someone severely or harshly, we can use this verb as well. A third way, and probably a little less common, but you might encounter excoriate to mean to damage or remove part of the surface of the skin. So if there's some sort of scrape or tear and kind of a layer or part of the skin is torn away, again, you may encounter the verb there. For now, you should know that excoriate is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is drop the T on the end before you add ing. That can form excoriating. The past tense and the participle form of our verb can be made by just adding the letter D, since this verb already ends in an E. Now, our verb ends with the letter E, but you'll notice the ending sound is a T sound. So, base verb, excoriate. So, because we have that ending T sound, when I add the ED ending, I'm going to make an id sound. And I'm going to add an extra syllable to the verb when I say it. So the past tense and the participle form of the verb should sound like this. Excoriated. Excoriated. Okay? Now, we don't have any phrasal verbs that we need to study, so we can move on and do a little verb tense practice. Today, we're going to make sentences in the past perfect and the simple future. Let's start with the past perfect. We use this verb tense to talk about completed actions. But what makes it different than just the simple past tense is that this verb tense is stressing or noting to someone else that a particular action occurred before a certain point in time or before another action. You'll notice past perfect here has two P's, and that can help you remember you'll need two parts to make your verb. We will be using a past form of have, which is had, and then the participle form of the verb. And this is going to be our structure no matter what our subject is. We only have one form of had, or one form of past tense there with have. So that's why our structure stays the same no matter what our subject is. Let's take a look at an affirmative or positive example. The president had excoriated the companies for taking cost-cutting measures when transporting toxic chemicals. Again, I always look for real examples, and this was one usage. It's referring to an event a few years ago when there was really just awful train derailment with toxic chemicals, and the president at the time, again, was severely or harshly criticizing these companies, and maybe how he felt they weren't taking an active role in cleaning up and protecting people from illnesses or other negative impacts from this train derailment and chemical spill that resulted. Now let's look at making a sentence in the negative in the past perfect. To do this, again, we'll start with our subject, we'll use had, not, and then the participle form of the verb. Here's another example. The media hadn't excoriated the official for his repeated lies. Here, they're noting this person was not denounced or severely criticized. Finally, if you want to make a yes or no question in the past perfect, start with had, then we'll have our subject, and then the participle form the verb. Here's another example. Had the coach excoriated referees earlier in the match? Here's something else I noticed as I was looking for examples. I saw this excoriated being used in reference to a lot of angry people in connection to sports. So coaches, managers, sometimes players, and the way they were yelling and interacting much of the time with officials or referees. Now, let's move on and make some sentences in the simple future. Today, we're going to make sentences using be going to. That's most common as people discuss their plans, but we can still use it to discuss offers and promises as well. Now, the trick here with the simple future is that we need to use the present form of be. And be has 3 forms in the present tense, so we're going to have to pay attention to our subject. In the affirmative or in positive sentences, if our subject is I, then we use am going to, and then the base verb. If our subject happens to be you, we, or they, will use are going to, and then the base verb. Finally, if our subject is he, she, or it, we'll use is going to, and then the base verb. Let's take a look at an example. She is hesitating to tell her story because she knows his fan base is going to excoriate her. So I saw a sentence similar to this from an attorney or a lawyer representing a group of women who alleged to have been assaulted by a very famous performer. This person, though, was noting there were additional accusers, but some of them were afraid to speak publicly because of the harsh criticism or attacks that they may receive as a result. Now, let's take a look at a negative simple future sentence. Again, to do this, we've got to pay attention to our subject. Then we'll use the form of be that matches, followed by not, going to, and then the base verb. Here's another example. They aren't going to excoriate their knees doing this work because there are protective pads that can be worn. Now, this seems like more of a promise here. So we're back to that definition of kind of taking off a layer of skin. But here, someone maybe is trying to reassure someone that won't happen. Now, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple future. To do this, we start with the form of be. Whatever form matches the subject, that subject comes next. Then we'll use going to and then our base verb. Here's another example. Are the candidates going to excoriate one another throughout the campaign? So again, that would be back most likely to that criticizing harshly or severely. Now, let's spend a moment looking at some words that are related to our verb excoriate. What we'll start with here is the noun excoriation. This is the verbal denouncing or criticizing of someone or something. An example of this in a sentence might be, commentators' excoriation of the coach now looks foolish after the team's turnaround. So you can maybe imagine if you happen to be a sports fan and follow commentators or kind of pre-game, post-game show where you have lots of talking heads offering their opinions. And here, maybe this particular person has been criticized, and now their team is performing well. Now, a second way you could use the noun excoriation is to refer to that act of scratching, scraping one's skin, so having an abrasion. An example of this might be, this excoriation disorder is characterized by the repeated urge to pick compulsively at the skin, resulting in visible lesions on the skin. So, here, this definition gets to be a little more medical than probably is what's necessary for our verb videos, but it does give you a good example of this noun in a sentence describing a particular skin where a particular disorder of the skin where someone is constantly picking, and that leads to this scratching and scraping or kind of removal of that top layer of skin. Well, I want to thank Qatar again for making this suggestion and her patience. I think the suggestion has been waiting for me for a few months. I really am very grateful when viewers make them, so please continue to suggest verbs for future videos. But thanks for everyone who watched today's verb. I hope you all have a great day.